What's up, soldiers? Thank you for joining me on this video today, where we're talking strongman success strategies for max out events. In strongman, you are going to come across an event that has a 1 rep max in it. So sometimes that's going to be an all max out competition, but more typically, you're going to have 1 max lift out of 5 in a typical strongman competition. So in order to do your best to maximize points and get on the podium or even possibly win the competition, we have to go in with the right strategy to execute and perform to the highest level. Because it doesn't matter how strong you are in the gym, if you just win it on game day, it's all for nothing. So before we get into this, please do me a favor and hit the like button down below. Please click subscribe to the channel to get more content on strongman and all things getting swole in the mind, body, and soul. So when we're talking about maxing out and scoring points and doing our best in an entire competition, the biggest thing we need to consider is how we're conserving and preserving our energy across the entire show. This does not apply to you if you are only concerned about one specific lift in a competition. Like sometimes people will go to do a full powerlifting meet and all they care about is hitting a really big bench. So obviously all our energy and resources are going to be pooled towards that. But in most instances, we want to perform at our highest level across all the different things. So whether this is powerlifting, World Old School Strongman has a Zercher squat, log press, and deadlift. Static Monsters is a log press and a deadlift, and often promoters are going to throw in a third or a fourth event in there. We want to consider how we can perform to a very high degree on those first couple lifts without taking away from our nervous system and muscular fatigue so that we can still lift heavy on those later events. So what we want to do is always start the day with a success. Our openers on every lift, whether it's the first lift of the day, like let's say, that squat, if it's the second lift of the day, like log press, third lift of the day, deadlift, our openers on all of those need to be something that are a guaranteed success, okay? So what's that going to do? That's going to set you up mentally to know that, yes, I'm good, I got points on the board, I'm not going to zero. A lot of times people start too heavy, they miss their first one, and they go into complete panic mode, which will set them up for maybe a miss again, and then they bomb out. In powerlifting, if you bomb out of squats, you're out of the entire meet, okay? But in strongman, even if you zero, you're going to have a very, very hard time climbing back from a zero to do well with points. Even if you win the rest of the events, that's a huge gap in your performance that you need to avoid at all costs, okay? So it's better to go conservative, get some points on the board, and carry your energy into the following events. Now, as you level up as a lifter, the more competitive experience you have and just the more overall training time you have on you, you're going to develop the ability to hit a lot of heavy maxes and have sufficient recovery and conditioning to do it over and over. So you'll see a lot of these 0.01% lifters, they can be in this like 98, 99, even 100% range for multiple lifts, but that's only because of like a lot of experience. They know what the appropriate attempts are for their body and how they're feeling that day. And they also know how to do all those little intangibles that we'll talk about in the rest of this video. So start conservative, save some energy. If it's a log press first, don't go completely for broke. Save it on a deadlift. Now, what's important is a lot of these all max events in strongman and powerlifting end with a deadlift. Deadlift, since it is less technical than bench press or log press, squat or Zercher squat, you can take your mind off the technique a little bit and use a lot of energy and emotion. This is why deadlifts, you see a lot more people getting really hype and crazy over big deadlifts than you do a log press or a squat of some sort. It's because you can get more out of that just huge wave of energy that you're building up to go into that. So that really does drain your energy system though. Like if you were just excited all day long, it's like going on roller coasters. If you're screaming and hooting and hollering all day long, you like feel an energetic drain after it because like your adrenaline is all the way up here, right? So that's why we want to save a little bit of that for deadlifts, one reason, but two, these other lifts are more technically demanding, squats and presses. So you do need to really not like blind yourself with rage, focus in on your technique and execute on those. But again, As you get better, as you level up, you'll be able to apply technical proficiency with that wave of energy. But that only comes through experience. Now, in a 5-event strongman show, you have to consider the order of all of these things. So like in the past, I ran an event where an axle deadlift for max was the last event. So in that instance, absolutely you can go for broke on that one. But more commonly, a max lift is going to take place at the very, very beginning, right? A max deadlift, like they do very frequently at the Rogue or at the Arnold, will really fry you if you go to 100%. Now, Hafthor Bjornsson at the Rogue Invitational this past November, he had the potential to go for a big record, but he won the deadlift by an absolute landslide on his 3rd attempt. They were going to give him a 4th, but that attempt was easy. He chose not to go for a 4th because he was saving his energy for the rest of the competition, okay? So very, very smart, and that's something you need to do and use as your strategy, because if you get in first place in a strongman competition, you get those points whether you won by 200 pounds or by 2 pounds. So play smart. If that is a particular strength for you, only do what you have to do in order to win and get those points, okay? Now back to energy preservation, where we talked about like adrenaline, right? We don't want to have a huge adrenaline jump right out the gate. However, again, as you get experience, as you become a better lifter, as you take good care of yourself all the time through practices like quiet time, meditation, and things like that, you can develop the ability to mentally peak, relax, and have a good flow throughout the entire day where you can build your excitement back up over and over and over again. What you do not want to do is stay up high all day long. Like I said earlier, if you're at an endless roller coaster, like for example, your adrenaline's up here, it's just going to totally wipe you. We need to kind of dip into that adrenaline peak for just long enough so that we can capitalize on the energy that we're creating and then come back down to relaxation. This is why the use of stimulants correctly are so important. Most of us like to have caffeine in our pre-workouts or caffeine before competition, but dose this correctly. Consider what I talked about earlier with some of these events that are more technically demanding. We don't want to be so stimmed up that we lose all senses and we get like some of those jitters and stuff, and we're totally blind to our techniques, our training, our routines, this and that. We want to be in that little sweet spot, that flow state where we have good high energy, but it's not like so overwhelming that we can still focus on what we want to do and execute. So think about in a 5-event show, I would plan in advance like where you're going to do your pre-workouts, right? Like I will sit down and look at a competition and game plan like, okay, I could do a little bit, probably okay on event number 1, depending on what it is. Like let's say it was a truck pull or something. For me, that's not something that requires me to have like a whole lot of like gusto and this and that. But a deadlift does. So I might start the day, if it was a deadlift first, some good stimulation, and I'll try to ride that like caffeine boost maybe to event 3 or event 4, and then I would redose up for event 4. So I don't typically like to consume a lot of this, but just make sure you're not overdoing that. You want to combine it like with your internal excitement to get the best effect, but don't let it like completely drain you, okay? Just strategize. When you're looking at all the different events, where can you use it to maximize your success, okay? Lastly, just pay attention. When you're going at these competitions, sometimes you're going to be following the same person over and over and over again. They just like don't change the order. And then sometimes the orders change. So know that going into your competition, if it's same order, all 5 events, or if it's a changing order in between flights, in between events, you just have to know what that's going to look like. So if you think like, oh, I'm going to go last every time, but in reality, it could change depending on the weight. And then this next one, oh, you're up first, then you're not ready. You also have to warm up, prime, mentally rehearse, even things like putting your wrist wraps on or slipping into your deadlift suit. If you know exactly when you're going, especially ahead of time, you're planning all of this out, you're going to have a better chance at succeeding. So next, when we're talking about attempts, I already kind of covered this, but we want to make sure your first attempt on anything you're doing is a guarantee, all right? This is something I would say in like the 90, maybe even lower to like 88% to 93% range. And why we want to do that is to boost your confidence and make sure that you're not zeroing and getting yourself in the flow of a meet. A lot of times we have a lot of jitters on game day before this thing even starts, but if we start our day off with a nice, good, successful attempt, it's going to allow some of that to wash over us and like, all right, now we're in it. Now let's go. Let's get it going, you know? So it's just a good way to start things off. But also, I think it's important to demonstrate to your judge that you have the ability to do this well and do it correctly. So this is a little gamesmanship and like strategy that you got to play, which you can also apply to events where you have a lot of reps. If you do the first one or two, say deadlift with a perfectly locked out form, you're going to get a little leeway, even if it's subconscious from your judge, on a good lift or a bad lift. But if every time you lock out, even on your first one, you're struggling, you're coming up and you have soft knees and soft hips, let's say you even get a pass, on your next couple of events, that judge is going to be really hypercritical to pay attention to those little things that you were off on from the first or the attempt before that. So for you to boost confidence, to get your body in a successful rhythm with the technique of the lift, and to demonstrate to your judge that you're a good lifter to help you get a good lift, always guarantee that this is a good lift. Now your second and third, you have to really determine based off like what your strategy is, like what are you trying to end up with depending on the format of the competition. How are you doing overall? And like what was the speed of that last lift? So I'm going to give you a real world example right in this. The first time I went in for a 700-pound deadlift in a competition, my lifts were, first one I did a 620-pound deadlift. So that was actually right about 92.9%. So it was right about 93. My second lift was 660, which was just under 98%. Now my goal for the day was actually 675. Okay, that was my target. But because this one flew, I was feeling great. I was in a really good flow state. My energy was conserved. I had benched earlier before that, but I did not go all out. I probably went to about 97%, so I could have a good smooth lift, but not fry my system. I knew that I was fully fresh to go big. So I ended up pushing it to 700 pounds, which was 103.9% of my original target, 675. So I based that off of how well I was executing, my kind of overall strategy for the day, and how fast my 620 and my 660 moved here. Now you also want to play some just good mental strategies and like mindset things in your head. When I was doing that, 40-pound jump from 620 to 660. When I decided that I was going to go for 700, first off, I want to thank Coach Josh Bryant, who said 700's there if you want it. It's like, oh, okay. But once I thought about it, I was like, yeah, come on. I watched my video of me doing that 660 immediately after lifting, and I said, oh yeah, I'm going for it. It's in. That one moves so quick. I've got 40 more pounds on me. All I did was jump 40 pounds from here to here. All I got to do is do it again. So kind of judge based off, like, you should know as an athlete, like how these weight jumps feel for you. So you have a reasonable guess and approximation of what ranges you're going to be able to work with. And again, I cannot stress that the more experience you have as a competitive athlete, the easier it is to use good discretion and make good judgments about what you need to do based on how you're feeling, how you're moving, and how you're performing, right? Now, other things we have to consider on game day is be in your routines, right? This means all the stuff you do that is successful for your training, you need to do that for your competition as well. That means sleep, daily activity, mindset rituals. If you're somebody that meditates, it doesn't make sense to wake up first thing and start listening to headbanging music. You want to keep your body in its rhythm, not just the day or days or weeks before, but also warming up, right? You should warm up as close as possible to the way that you warm up for a training lift. Now, sometimes warm-up areas are a little chaotic, a little messy, but do as best as you can. Routines also involve, like I said, the foods you're eating and the stimulants you use. This is not the time to overdose and overload stimulants. Okay, a lot of people will like go to an expo where they have all these vendors and they try this new thing that they've never had before, and it gives them a bad reaction, like nerves, jitters, tingles, whatever, and it ends up giving them a pretty poor performance. So get some of those samples, but save them for later. Now is not the time for that. Now is not the time to try some new technique. You know, you should be very refined based on how you trained and peaked for this competition, that all you have to do is just perform this routine again, show up and execute, right? Next up is relax. Now, we all get competition nerves, anxiety, and jitters, but you need to try and not let them overwhelm you, okay? This goes back to talking about like some of the use of like stimulants, right? If you're really, really full of caffeine and that pre-workout and stuff, like you're gonna be, tense on this. So that's another reason why it's important to time that stimulant use correctly, so you can put your energy into the lifts at the right times and not just like let it like roll on you all day long. Things you can do to relax are, again, conserve your energy. This is very important. Do not go out and like waste a bunch of time out in the sun. That's going to drain you. Don't do extra physical activities. That's going to wear you out. Don't listen to outrageous news or like things that are really exciting. Try to keep it, mellow, so we can, again, conserve our energy so that it's all ready to go and channeled into the right thing at the right time. Another way we can relax is just be nice, right? Socialize with your other competitors. What you are capable of should have no bearing or no influence, or should not be influenced by what anybody else can do. If you've been training hard, you know what you are capable of. So find some camaraderie with your fellow competitors. You guys are in this together. So that's that. It's always good to network. Maybe nothing's going to be done on that day of, but you could find a new training partner, a new gym to go to, a great social media connection, or just like being cool. Maybe you see them do something at this meet and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you could learn and implement that for yourself at the next one when you train for it and find that new tip, trick, or strategy. But also be a pro. Being a pro is just being, have all your things routine, rhythmic, and punctual, okay? Being a pro is being ready when your name is called. Nobody likes that person that their name is called and then they start strapping up and then they start putting on their sleeves. Even when I run competitions, I call that explicitly. When your name is called, like, you have to be ready. This goes back to paying attention, because if you're coming to one of my competitions, I will tell you in rules meeting when it is expected for you to be ready. And if you are not ready, you're going to forfeit your attempt. It's just that simple. But if you're a pro, you're paying attention, you're being nice, like, you're going to have no problems. You're not going to be like overwhelmed by like, oh shit, I have to go now. Oh, and then, you rush and you don't focus. So all of that. So just pay attention. If you have a coach or a handler, they can help you do these things. Like, just be a consummate professional, which also, again, includes being nice. I do want to mention as well that there's a real thing that happens subconsciously with your judges. This is part of creating your own luck. If you are an ass, whether the judge is trying to be completely objective or not, subjective rather, judge might in the back of their head think wow, I do not like that guy. And they may give you some tougher down calls. That is the reality of being human, okay? As much as we want complete total fairness in judging, if you're a really cool, nice guy, they're gonna just look at you slightly more positively no matter how neutral they try to be. This creates a real impact. So if you're cool and nice, you're more likely to succeed on some of these attempts. Lastly, visualize success. This is the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety is thinking what's the worst that could happen? Visualizing success is believing the best will happen. If you listen to any of my videos, I talk about this all the time. It's true. Look it up. Don't believe me if you don't want to. Give it a Google. But a real, vividly imagined experience is completely indistinguishable to the central nervous system than a real, live, experienced moment. So if we're visualizing everything we can to the highest order and we're seeing ourselves as successful when we do it, we are giving ourselves practice reps of being good, positive, successful, and strong. Then we're going to layer it with a good guaranteed opener, something that you're just going to absolutely nail and execute perfectly. Then we're just layering. So we're just developing a habit of success. Okay. So these are some guidelines for how to handle max outs. There's really a lot of different ways to approach this. And again, I want to really emphasize two things. The things that will help you out the most are figuring out how to use and conserve your energy the best, and then also gaining competitive experience. If you want to really be good at these, those are the two things that will carry you much further than anything else. So get out there, train hard, compete. I appreciate you guys for watching. If you want more info on Strongman for training programs, mental tips, tricks, and strategies, technical guides, some pro Strongman Q&As, check out my private community, clubstrongman.com. Hope to see you on the inside. Either way, I appreciate you watching. Thank you and have a championship day.